have quarantine hair. I'm not happy about it. We're gonna get into part 3 of my pentatonic lessons. It's really, I talk about pentatonics in most of my lessons, so, I've been diving into a couple of the shapes and the whole idea that there is a straight line that kind of connects all of them, and that you just kind of have to take a certain shift into account, especially with the G and B string. The tuning between the G string and the B string is not a fourth like all the others. It's a major third. So that means we get to the B string to continue whatever pattern that we have learned. We shift up in position by 1 fret. So what exactly do I mean by that? I'll do a quick recap. First off, the straight line, let's say we're in A minor, and there's an A minor bar chord, 5, 7, 5, 5, 5, that A minor bar chord. That is kind of the basis of our straight line shape. You can see I'm barring the 5th fret, and all I'm really doing is adding on the 5th of the chord and an octave. Up 1 string and 2 frets on these first 3 strings, 1, 2, 3, is going to give us a perfect 5th, or your power chord, when you add in the octave, which is up 2 strings and 2 frets. So up 1 string, 2 frets is a 5th. Up 2 strings, 2 frets is an octave. And that's, you have to really understand that before you start applying these pentatonic shapes. So this chord has the minor third here. It has this C, because we can't play 2 notes on 1 string. It has this C, up an octave there. So you can find octaves that way as well. Up 3 strings and back 3 frets. So up 2 strings, up 2 frets is an octave. And if I went up 3 strings and back 3 frets, I find that same octave. So that's good to know, because that starts to just, at least when you're in this minor mode of pentatonics, you can start to see where to apply your root, your minor third, and your 5th. And within the pentatonic scale, we also add the perfect 4th, which is up 1 string, same fret. So on the 5th fret there, we hit that D. So, and then we add the minor 7th. That is the 5th fret on the D string. And that's 5 notes as opposed to 3 notes. So you start to be able to experiment with a lot of different options with just those notes. The 4th always kind of wants to move away. It's that dissonant tone. But it's essential to know that it is within this shape, and that not every note of the pentatonic minor is always going to be safe. That 4th sounds a little funny, but you can do things with it. You can bend. You generally bend the 4th up to a 5th, which is in the chord. It's in that minor chord. So let's take this straight line and this up to principle and apply it to this same octave here, to our new octave right here, A. So 5, 8, 5, 7 becomes 7, 10, 7, 9 on the D and G strings. And then so right here, we can't just continue that pattern and go up to 7 and 9 again like we do there. We got to go shift up 1 fret. So your line is still there, but your position has shifted. And this is the muscle memory thing that has to start to become associated with the G and the B strings. And I've so far come up with kind of cutesy little names for each of these. The straight line, obviously, self-explanatory. The next way going that way, I call the Tetris piece. So if we're in A minor, and this bar, instead of barring with our index finger, we think of it as being our pinky, and we want to play pentatonics, that's still our root note, and we find that minor 7 right there, down 2, down 2. So we have this shape now. And see, I'm trying to play that with my first and third fingers as per the first lesson in this series right here. And this is your root, and then there's your third. They sound muddy when you play them together in that range. Up here it doesn't. Sounds clear, but down here, especially with a little gain, you can get a little muddy, a little dark sound and not real clear. But that's still, you want to be able to know that you can use that note and these other notes within your pentatonic positions. Maybe you won't make a chord with that combination, but you can always find a riff that's there. So up 2 frets, up 2 strings, you get the same thing. Now, when you want to do that on the B string, you have to go and account for this B string shift. So, and then A is not here. A is here. So that shows us shift. That's this pattern. So there you have 7-10, 7-9, shift, 8-10, ending on the root. So that octave all those octaves there are then available to you, and everything starts over again here at the 12th fret. So then you have A again. So it's good to learn the notes of the fretboard. It is, people say, Dad, I don't need to learn the notes of the fretboard. Yeah, you don't. You can really do all of this on position. And somebody kind of brought up a point that I should be teaching a lot of this stuff based on modal names, especially when you start shifting some of these shapes around. And I'll get to that. That can be a little bit confusing if you're first starting out and all of a sudden you have to learn 7 Greek words and associate a scale shape with it. What I'm trying to do right now is introduce the minor shapes and how they've related to the major shapes. And we're going to move into how those minor shapes aren't restrictive, but they're actually pretty freeing once you start to create progressions that are kind of modal based or even non-modal based, because you can quickly and easily find minor shapes for almost any chord that you throw your way or that a band is throwing your way. And then you can relatively find its relative major shape. But you can also find the other modes within all of these. So this A minor, if we want to dig into modes for a second, can be A Phrygian, it can be A Dorian, and it can be A Aeolian, depending on your specific notes outside of the triad that are then extensions. Or in this case, Phrygian would have a flatted second. And it would also have a minor 6th. So that's still the minor shape. We've just added this and this. So that's Phrygian. We also have Locrian available in there. So if we did that same move, but flat the 5th, so it's not really in there, you just have to take this 5th, but the same concept is there with the flatted 2nd. So that's Locrian and Phrygian, all within that pentatonic shape. Locrian needing one minor adjustment. It's the only one of the modes that doesn't have a perfect 5th. It has a flatted 5th, inherently has a flatted 5th. We'll get further into all of that, but A Aeolian is going to have a flatted 6th. and it's going to have a major second. Whereas a Dorian is going to have that major second, but it's going to have a major sixth. So it has your minor seventh, but a major sixth. As opposed to Aeolian, as opposed to Phrygian, as opposed to Locrian. So all of those are minor based because they have the root, the minor third, and that's all you need for minor. 6 out of 7 of those modes also have a perfect fifth. The final mode, Locrian, has a flatted fifth. So that's the one note away difference between all of the minor modes. From Dorian to Aeolian, you flat the sixth, and then from Dorian to Phrygian, you flat the second, and then from Phrygian to Locrian, you flat the fifth. So each one is one away. The major modes work the same way. We'll get all deeper into all of that. I do have a whole bunch of other lessons, and the one specifically called What's with the Modal Phone Number, and reinterpreting a guitar lesson from some magazine, one of the magazines from the 90s. Really gets into that. So check those out if you have some more questions, but just know that I have some plans on going further into this later. So the great big mirror. Coffee. So far we have the straight line, the Tetris piece when we go this way, and we have another straight line with one change, which I call the snake. In A minor, if we took that straight line and wanted to go this way to make a pentatonic shape, instead of this way, we go this way. So that would be 5 on the E string, 3/5 on the A, D string would be 2/5, G string 2/5, B string 3/5, E string 3/5, back to your root. So those octaves are on the E string 5th fret, G string 2nd fret, and E string 5th fret. So you can play them all together, and it's, just a stacked set of the same notes. Now, the straight line is the pinky. The Tetris piece would then be, or what I'm doing as this finger in a lot of these lessons, the straight line would then be with this finger instead of this finger, and so this finger is now going to handle the Tetris piece, which would be 3/3, 2/2, 3/3. So you got 3 to 5 for your root with the first and third. So that's 7th to root. And then let's take that piece and let's go up here now. So we have the straight line here on the 17th fret. We're running out of room that way. So we're going to pretend that we're up here, okay? And then this finger, so the snake, you got your Tetris piece, and then the snake is just another straight line with this shift. And then we do get to go backwards, because this E is part of our shape. So with this finger now, we can do the snake, and we can do the Tetris piece here on this finger. So when you get to the E string, you've hit your 5th again, and then you have the 7th at the 15th fret. So E at the 12th, G at the 15th, and then you root again at the 12th. So your straight line is there. with this snaky shift. Okay, so there's the straight line again within this shape. So you can see a straight line here with our pinky, and let's imagine kind of working our pinky and our index finger together. So you see, you got your straight line, and then your snake right here. So you get fancy and skip the Tetris piece, you know, or throw it in there. So there's a mixing of the straight line, the Tetris, and the snake. So the GB, the great big mirror, this GB shift that happens here. We have another straight line happening here. So here's our A string, and that's our A note. Now we know going this way, we have this shape with the snake and the Tetris. So I've also been talking about continuing to go this way. So this is our root. Instead of doing our index finger as our root, we're going to use our ring finger, and we'll do 10, which is the same as 10 to 12, is the same as 15 to 17 on the E. So that means we're really kind of making the straight line with this finger again, and we're going to make the Tetris piece with this finger. So we have, so on this finger we have, so let's mirror this, but down a string and over, because we have a straight line here. That's our D, our perfect fourth. So we have our perfect fourth here on the E string at the 10th fret, hammer up to the 5th, right? And then we go 7th, the G is located at the 10th fret of the A, and then root again. So after that we have a minor third that happens. We have to have a minor third. There's our C. Up a string and back 2 frets is going to give you a minor third on all these 3 strings as well. Here's an A, and you see that's a major second. You have to go this way when you shift up to the B string. So A to C is going to be 14 to 13 on the G and B strings. And here between the A and D strings, it's going to be 12 to 10. So if you have that pattern, so you repeat it that way, you don't go. You go. So that accounts for the shift. And what we're going to do is account for this shift also kind of happening right here. It's happening on the 9th fret. We need that E on the G string. And we need this A here on the B string. There's another A. That's the last note of this pattern, or the root note of that pattern. So you can find it. If you're doing little bluesy licks, you can plant this finger into this position by going up from your E string to the B, down to the B string, exactly from the 5 to the 7, from the 5 to the 8, and then slide up from the 8 to the 10. And that puts you in that position. And then your minor third is here. So the shape of the snake also happens right here. So you see a straight line here, except for this great big mirror shift. It happens on the G string this time. So you have, from the A string, you have 12, and then on the D string, 10, 12, and then 9, and then 12 for the 7th, or the G, the 7th note of the scale, and then octave there. Remember I said if you're on these lower strings, on this one, you can go up 3 and back 3. Well, you have to account for the B string shift here now, so you can go up 3 and back 2. So there's your A that we found. And then you know you have, there's an octave, and there's, so we're linking this straight line and this straight line with these fancy little names. We haven't talked about this second shape right here, the relative major shape, but if you think about it this way, if now we go and take this index finger and move it here, and we have our bar shape going on here, that same kind of Tetris piece is happening here. But we have our E that we have to account for. So it modifies it, but you really can just, everybody knows this shape so well, 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8, 5. So if you just go this way, you can use, I kind of use both fingers on this shape. And duplicate just this side of the shape with these two fingers. You got 8, 7, 7, 7, 8, 8, right? And then you have this snake again that's been shifted here. So we have this pattern. So we have our straight line here. Straight line, and then the great big mirror. And then in between, we're going to have those 8, 8, 7, 7, 7, 8. So that's what Sean Lane referred to as, you know, a totally different shape number than what most of us know as. Let's go back to calling this shape 1 of pentatonic minor. So that would be our relative major shape. A lot of people just think of this shape as your relative major shape. The 8, 10, 7, 10, 7, 10. That's the major shape. You have a root, you have a major third, and then you have the perfect fifth of C. That's why C major will be the relative major to A minor. So that's Ionian to Aeolian, as far as Ionian being major. Okay, so that's your 1 and your 6 if you're in the key of C. There are plenty of ways to also think of this. You could be in the key of G, and the C would be your 4, and the A would be the 2. So you'd get a completely different sound by playing C Lydian, or the mode that is created by continuing and building your modes the way that you do. You'll find C Lydian is a major mode, and it has the raised fourth. So instead of going major, see, that gives us an F right there. And that's C major. But if we go to F sharp, which is going to be in the key of G, see the key of G, whole step, half step, whole step, to whole step. That gives you your major scale. If we altered that pattern and do it here at the 4th fret, that's a mode. That is now making that scale fit. And you see how that F sharp throws throws the ear back to that G, but if you... So that F natural brings the ear back to C, but the F sharp is the major seventh to G. If you had a minor seventh to G, but then also we're playing a major third, that's mixolydian, or that's making your scales and your triads off of the fifth degree of that scale. So that's the deeper theory of it all. That's where you can take these simple shapes and start to go and start to explore and say, oh, now I get it. I understand why that song that goes from C to A, I always sound a little funny whenever I hit that F. Well, it's because it's probably, the key is actually in G. They're just not really giving you that G, or maybe it's in there somewhere and you're just not catching it as the number one, you know? So like if I went C to A, and then like, let's say I went D to G. See, that pretty much is outlining the key of G major and ending there. So we're doing a 4 to 2, 5 to 1 kind of a move there, which would be major to minor, C major to A minor, as opposed to 1 to 6, you know? And then you have this D, which is the 5 to G. And you hear that kind of move there. But if you kind of miss that G, if you skip it, then your ear isn't really hearing until you play that, you know? But so you can modally vamp over that with G major, strictly G major, or you can start to vamp C Lydian, you could vamp A Dorian. You see where I'm getting with how these pentatonic shapes, they sound restrictive because it's like you got a minor third or a major third. You got your fifth, and it's always going to want to be that unless you're working off of the seventh. Nobody's really ever doing that unless you're building and extending and doing all that kind of stuff. So on a basic level, it starts to sound intimidating. And it's why I haven't really been throwing in too many of these Greek names, but you can go back and listen. You can Google all of these names and start to see how there's really only major and there's really only minor. So these pentatonic shapes, then those strict guidelines become very freeing as you create your progressions. You start to see where, oh, I can use these familiar shapes and get a completely different sound if I just use them a little bit differently than I have in the past. And there's ways to do it without necessarily knowing the name of every mode. So these are part of the tricks to all of that. This great big mirror, I hope that wasn't too confusing, but it is really just a way to look at the shapes extending. This shape number one, we can keep just going that way. Tetris Piece, you know? And then snake it here. And that puts us at our root on the fifth string. And then we can keep going that way, root on the fifth string. Go that way. And then we keep going that way. Oh, bail the last note, right? As usual. Anyway, keep practicing and maybe you won't bail the last note. I hope this has been a helpful series. I'm going to stop pushing pentatonics at the moment. The next set of lessons that I'm going to do, I'm going to work into some modal stuff. And that's if you guys want it. Leave me a message down below in the comments. Click like, please. Subscribe if this is your first time to the channel. welcome. If you're back watching these videos, sorry for the delay. I've lost 2 terabytes worth of space between 2 hard drives, and I've had a lot of computer recording issues. But I'm back with lost footage never recovered, and with about 500 gigs of my own music collection gone, including personal recordings. So I'm a little bit bummed about that. But here I am still. You know, the channel's not dead, and I'm doing what I can. And I got a really cool video coming up about that telly over there too. So keep an eye out for that. That thing has a story to it, and I'm lucky to be able to tell it. Anyways, again, Double D Guitar, like, subscribe, share, leave me a comment if this has been helpful. If it hasn't been helpful, or if it's been confusing, leave me a comment about that. Hopefully I can clear up some of the confusion that some of this can create, because going in at this angle can be a little bit confusing. All right, thanks for hanging.